Okay, now that we have our project set up, let's go ahead and move forward with the creation of our player and a light that will enable us to see the player. So first things first, the player. What are we going to use? Well, we could run off and create some fancy geometry and bring that in, or we could start simple. We can create a cube, use the cube as our player, set up all of the code for him, and then later bring the model in that our artist has put together and simply switch out the cube for the real geometry.
Okay.
And so let's take that approach. That allows us to just get things going and rough a game in quickly.
Sure, kind of prototype it.
That's right. So what I'm going to do is create a cube for our player. So I'm going to come up here to Game Object, come down to Create Other, and then let's just come down to Cube. Now we have our cube. First things first, let's go ahead and give him a name. So I'm just going to come over here and call him Player. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the position to 0, 0, 0 for now. So come in here and set 0 for Y and 0 for Z. Okay, so we can see him over here sitting there. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to scale him up a little bit. So let's take him up to about 1.5. So we'll go ahead and jump into 1.5, 1.5. And funny enough, I'm going to go and do Z as well, even though since we are doing an orthographic 2D style game.
Yeah, you couldn't really see it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep this a nice cube for at the moment. Now, bringing this game object in of type cube, you'll notice that, again, we have the game object. But then moving on down, we already have 3 components attached. We have a mesh filter. The mesh filter holds our mesh. It holds our geometry. So all I need to do when I bring new geometry in later is simply, once the geometry has been brought into the project, drop this down, and that geometry would then show up in our menu. From there, we have a box collider. Box colliders are very helpful when you're wanting to do collision type stuff, which we will be wanting to do soon. And then finally, we have our mesh renderer. And the mesh renderer is going to be the guy that's responsible for actually getting the surfaces onto our mesh that we are then able to see in the end. And we can also determine things like cast shadows, receive shadows, and then finally materials that will be applied as well. And we can see right now element 0, default diffuse material. So let's go ahead and create our own material and apply that material to our player.
Okay.
So to do that, let's bring our attention back down here to project, because the material is just an asset that we will use with a game object as opposed to a game object that exists.
Okay.
So we need to create that down here in the project area.
A component, could you say?
It's not a component.
Okay.
It is just an asset, like how a texture
Sure.
would be an asset that you could use on a component. So here we are with a component, the mesh renderer, actually looking for a material.
Okay, I gotcha.
So I'm going to come down to project, right click, come up to create, folder, and this folder is going to be called, do you have a guess?
Ooh, materials?
Very good.
Ooh, so creative.
Oh yeah. So now we have materials, right click again with material selected, come down to create, and now I'm going to create a material. So here we are with our standard default diffuse material. First thing I want to do, simply click and give this guy a name. I'm going to call him M_player. M underscore is just something that's kind of carried over from Maya for me from so many years, and it's a quick way of designating my materials inside the material folder. I like having, this is something just to point out real quick, I like having the M underscore here. If I was to create other folders up underneath the materials folder to help kind of keep things further organized,
sure,
but I still had materials that were sitting just at the root of the materials folder, everything is listed down here alphabetically, and so you could end up with a material, a folder,
right,
by doing M underscore in front of all of your materials. They'll all be grouped together.
Yeah.
Then you'll have your other subfolders.
And on top of that, it's just important to have naming conventions in general.
Yeah. So now that we've got this guy in place, let's give him a color. I'm just going to come in here, and again, I'm going to keep this as close to Casey's as I can. So I'm just going to go with some sort of, that's a little bit of a bright yellow, but we'll go with a yellow color.
Hey, my motorcycle's that color.
So we can see right now that on this material, we have a main color. We do have a place we can drag a texture if we had a texture. And we can also choose between a bunch of different shader types that are available for driving this material, but we'll just stick with the standard diffuse, the default diffuse. So now that we have created a material, let's get that material applied. All I need to do is simply left click, drag and drop him on the player. By doing that, you'll notice that our player is now turned yellow.
Very nice.
Furthermore, if we click on player and we take a look over here, look at this. On that mesh renderer that we were looking at a second ago, up under materials, size 1, element 0 now contains m_player instead of that default diffuse material.
Okay.
So we've got this guy applied, and we can see the material being applied as a component down here with the shader and everything, in which we could manipulate further if we would like. Next thing I want to do, let's go ahead and add in a light. So we're going to come up to Game Object once again, and we're going to come down to Create Other. And then from inside here, let's pick a directional light. So we'll drop him in. He's already pointed in the right direction, so this is just giving us parallel rays of light.
That brightened everything up.
And everything's nice and bright now, and that works well for me. That's everything that I wanted to do in this video. Just a very quick video of getting a player in the scene, getting a light illuminating that player, and making sure the player had his own material that we could manipulate. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Well, with that, that is going to wrap up this video.